Hey everyone, Coach Patrick. Welcome back to another weekly lesson. This is part of our commitment to educating the broader public, aka you, about how to be a better endurance athlete. This is something we do inside the team. We believe that smarter athletes are faster athletes, stronger athletes, go longer athletes, and education is a huge part of that equation. And so this week, I'm talking a little bit about holding onto the volume. In the last couple episodes, if you've checked them out here on the Facebook channel and Facebook feed, I've talked at detail around what it means to maintain your volume through the end of the season. This is apropos for the time that we're in right now in 2021 because races have been sort of catch as catch can. Sometimes they're happening, sometimes they're not. And so a typical season build, normally structured around what it would mean to have races on the calendar, has been disrupted. So I've encouraged many of you out there to architect your own end of the season to hold on to some volume training and not to short circuit things too early. Case in point, our athletes more than 25 plus who are going to compete at Ironman Hawaii, scheduled as of now for February of 2022, are essentially looking at maintaining their fitness through the fall before they begin the process of rebuilding for next year. It's tempting when you don't have anything else on the calendar to dial things back quickly. But in today's episode, I want to give you some context for that decision and hopefully some additional information that will allow you to make better decisions relative to your overall season. So let me begin by sharing with you our structure for what a season looks like. This is our essential overall season roadmap for the year. And we move from left to right. And so right now, most of you are sort of in that right-hand fourth column from the left, or fourth bubble from the left, the race column, where you've done some racing, etc. And this is where we hit sort of our peak volume and fatigue in the year. At the end of that block of time, we have some recovery, and then we move into the process of rebuilding for the next year. And this is an arc because it's meant to be an arc in terms of intensity, in terms of attention to detail, in terms of time spent, in terms of energy invested. It all kind of operates in this arc across the course of a year. And so naturally, at this time of year, we're headed into a downward trend where we say, okay, it's time for me to start thinking about next year, not because you are thinking about it in the normal context of what it means to prepare for a new season, but more so that this year is prematurely ended for many of you. And now you're saying, well, I don't really need to be serious until January. So what am I going to do between, end of September and January? I've got October, November, December. I've got 3 months to do some stuff before I get back into my training. What am I going to do? And the majority of athletes end up doing really sort of nothing. What they end up doing is sort of this hodgepodge of scattered training, getting to sleep in, which is awesome. We love recovery, doing workouts that you enjoy doing, but, really not having any sense of structure. Now, for some of you, this is really desperately needed, right? If you've got rigidity at work or just complexity or challenges associated with being an athlete and a normal human being, we get it, right? We want you to make sure that you're balanced and you're staying healthy. And there's periods of your life where you just need to go through that process, which is fine. However, if we are reverse engineering our future season and saying, how can I be super successful? Then we want to be a little more intentional around how we manage the workload of volume heading into your year. Specifically, I want to focus in on this chart here for you to take a look at the recover and preparation space there. And this is really important. If the bubbles were different sizes relative to the duration in which you spent in them, I would tell you that this recovery bubble here would actually be fairly small. In other words, that recovery bubble is about 2 weeks of time off at the end of your year before you start doing some baseline level work, preparation work to prepare for that next season. Not high quality, 3 disciplines, all the disciplines in the weight room, doing yoga, etc., getting up at 4 a.m. type work. No, preparation work, but the work that starts to set the stage. And the best way to do that is to be intentional about the workload that you're implementing. Inside Endurance Nation, we have our durability programs, which fill the space of the year, which allow athletes to start building fluency and skills at running, for example, which is a primary durability program, or balanced durability, which has a mix of different sports as an opportunity for you to lay sort of a consistent baseline foundation. There are 3 4-week plans. You can do all 3 of them in a row for a total of 12 weeks, or you can do one block, etc., depending on your schedule. But really, that's not the crux of what I'm saying right here. What I'm really focusing on is this recovery period. And this is important simply because athletes will often take too much time off. What does too much time off do to you? Too much time off breaks a lot of those healthy habits that you had around sleep and recovery and nutrition. Too much time off also allows you to kind of get a little stiff. Part of re-entry as we age is getting back into the mode of being active. If you've been inactive for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, getting back into the mode takes just that much longer. If you're down for 2 weeks, we need about 2 to 4 weeks to kind of get back into the mode of things, which is fantastic. But staying down, staying off for 6, 8, 12 weeks, for example, and then jumping right into the out-season program or jumping into a quality winter program, it's not going to yield the results that you like. We want to avoid exposing you to opportunities where we go from zero stress to significant stress, as those are the rapid changes in your course of your season that can lead to injury, additional strain, and sort of exposing any weaknesses you might inherently have, whether it's physiologically or from a scheduling perspective. So let's take you over to my Training Peaks data. I'll use my own data for today, and I'll kind of give you a sense of what it would mean to kind of involve data into this perspective, because I thought it might be super helpful for you to kind of take a look at. All right, so let me pull up this Chrome tab here, and I will share it for you. All right, awesome. Here we are inside my Training Peaks. And this, before we dive in really deeply, is a couple of years worth of data. You can see injured time off, etc., and then a couple of years of consistent training. I haven't raced since 2019 for an Ironman. This has just been regular training over here, but I want to get and dial into some of these zones over here to give you a sense of what it looks like, okay? So to be specific, let me head over to that screen right now so we have it. So let's take a look at what a year looks like. Here we go. I'll pull this year up for you here. This goes 2017. This season happens in this window right here. That's your 2017 season. There are 2 peaks there in terms of training and racing. So let's take a look at those. The first peak is in August for Tremblant. The second peak here is in October for Hawaii. And you get the 2 different peaks here as well in terms of work. And then you see the different races. And I also ended up racing that year. I did 3 Ironman races that year. I also went to Cabo, and raced Cabo as well. So I did 3 Ironman races in short succession. And then I went back to the drawing board and then started building for that subsequent year as well. And what I want you to look at here is this period of time here. Last race is November 12th. And lowest point here, November 22nd, starting to get back into training. About 10 days, 12 weeks later. Sorry, 10 days, 2 weeks later. Another example will be here at the end of the 2018 season. So peaking, let's see here again, some high training volume in early August, and then racing Hawaii because I just qualified in Hawaii, and then racing again this time in Cozumel afterwards. So these 2 blocks, and we'll see that this Cozumel block, November 18th, and in the bottom of my training block here, November 29th, about 10 days later as well. Similarly speaking, let's go here. We'll do Kona of 2019, and then Arizona of 2019, this peak, November 22nd, and the lowest of the low here is November 22nd. Let's see, looks like I kind of fell into a little bit of a rut here, but about the 14th or 15th, the block there. So the point being that as you go through the process of looking at your seasons and saying, how am I going to be structuring my time? We really want you to be thinking about the time it takes between the peak amount of work and then that return to exercise. And that 2-week window-ish is just about right. And it's a rule that I've been following for several years. And when you dive into this data and take a look at it, the key trend that I notice when I'm looking into this is this consistency of this lower point here, right, across the years, which is right about the time I get to about training load, since I use Training Peaks as my data, and whatever your data source may be, please use that. But right when I get to about that 90 CTL, in terms of the reduction in total training load, that's when I start to say, okay, hey, you know what? It's time for me to get back to my training. So I've got a trigger system as well where I could say, hey, looking at my data when I hit that lower point. And the reason why this is important is twofold. First, again, as I mentioned earlier, not taking too much time off, which really forces you to then spend more time re-entering. But secondly, is having a baseline level of volume that's pretty fairly sustainable for you that we're going to convert from time spent at volume, which is race specific, to time spent at intensity, which we do inside Endurance Nation in our winter training program known as the Outseason, in terms of rebuilding your fitness. In other words, we'll be doing a healthy amount of training after each of these peaks here and here. Let me pull up a bigger view for you. After each of the peaks, we're going to be doing a healthy amount of training. So we come off of this big peak, and then this block here, healthy training. We come off of, this big peak, and in here, healthy training. Part of the ability to build our fitness back up again, or in this case, to exceed here my training load, what I've done before, and again, to exceed here what I've done on my training load that I've done before, is simply a function of being able to recover, and then also being able to give myself space to absorb the work and convert that work into intensity. So inside our out-season training program, what we end up doing is a fair amount of training with intensity to keep the overall weekly structure low, and we manipulate the stress of the main set to raise your training load. And our goal is to build your strength in those first 14 weeks of the season relative to what you had earlier in the year. Not your fatigue, not the training stress, not the blue line. The fatigue happens across the course of the year, building to your peak training period just before your A race of the season, but rather building our strength. So if you exited last year with a bike strength of 200 watts, or if you exited last year with a 10K, pace of 9 miles per mile, 9-minute miles, then we want to get ourselves back to that space by the time we exit the out season. The goal there is to kind of put ourselves in a position where we can be successful because we've converted the volume and stress that we built from the prior season after a little bit of rest into the strength foundation that sets us up for another successful year. We build fast before we add far, and this transition period between the two is really important. So coming full circle for you as we wrap up our time here, coming up on 15 minutes, got to stay focused. As you're thinking about the time for your upcoming season and you're drawing a line in the sand and saying, I'm going to start on January 1st, or I'm going to start on December 1st, or whatever that date may be when you draw the line in terms of when you're going to become serious again moving forward, I want you to reverse engineer that. I want you to reverse engineer that at least 4 weeks of re-entry work, also known as durability here inside Endurance Nation, that preparation phase. 4 weeks of basic training. Just get the mobility back. Get the habits back. Start cleaning out the cobwebs, replacing equipment, the things that just need to get done at the beginning of the season. And then another 2 weeks back again for your recovery. So if January 1st is your date, then December 1st is your restart things at the very last minute. And then November 15th, 16th ends up being that start of the recovery to December 1st, really take that time off, which means between where I am now and November 15th in this particular use case, my job is to keep my training going. My job is to stay active and have fun, whether you picked social events to do like century rides, or you've picked individual challenges like a half marathon or a trail race, whatever it may be. So we want to keep some basic level of volume going so we can keep that stress on our system in a healthy and sustainable way, even without the events, that will then allow you to convert that into strength as we hit the next year. So do yourself a favor, do future you a favor, and don't cut your season short too soon. Starting too soon on the next year means you've got too long of a build-up, which is pretty unsustainable. Starting too late next year also means you're putting additional strain on your system. So finding that sweet spot, reverse engineering that get started date with 4 weeks at a minimum of durability work, 2 weeks of recovery, and work backwards to give yourself a block where you know up until that point we're going to maintain our volume to stay healthy and keep that overall endurance progression going. If you've got questions or comments about this perspective that I'm offering you, please go ahead and put them here on Facebook. Be sure to tag me. I'll see them. Those of you on the team, let's continue the conversation inside the community. Happy to help you sort through what it means to pick ideal and specific structure for your volume this fall to continue your progression to help that overall forward momentum and the trend that we built off of last season and the season before that towards the season that you're looking forward to have next year. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Coach Patrick from Endurance Nation signing off. Learn more about us online at endurancenation.us. See you.